Welcome to Legal Resources Radio, where we invite you into the world of social justice, advocacy, and public interest law. Throughout this podcast series, we'll share stories, insights, and expert advice from our dedicated team at the Legal Resources Centre, as well as from our valued guests. In each episode, we'll dive into the legal landscape, tackle pressing social issues, and aim to empower you with the knowledge to make a difference. Whether you're a community activist, a legal professional, passionate about social justice, or just curious, this is the place for you. So wherever you are, washing dishes, at work, on the bus, train, or plane, or just relaxing at home, plug in your headphones, take a deep breath, and get ready to begin.
Welcome to this episode of the Legal Resources Radio, where we sit down and discuss some of the contemporary human rights issues facing South Africa and exactly what it is that the Legal Resources Centre is trying to do about them. My name is Rankin, and I am a candidate attorney in the Makhanda office in the Eastern Cape. And today I'm joined by two very special guests to discuss a really important issue, not just in the Eastern Cape, but also across South Africa. The current crisis that we see in the scholar transport service and system that leaves many learners across the Eastern Cape stranded with no way of making it to and from school safely every day. Today I am joined by Mr. Petros Majola, who is the head of the Khula Community Development Project, who has been a long-time advocate around scholar transport issues in the Eastern Cape, and has also been a client of the Legal Resources Centre and sought to take the Department of Education and the Department of Transport to court on multiple occasions to advocate for the rights of learners to scholar transport. I am also joined by Mr. Cameron McConnachie, an attorney in the Makhanda office, who has been the attorney of record on all of these cases and is an expert on the legal regulation of scholar transport and how to make sure that the government does its job properly here. So just by way of introduction, Mr. Majola, can you start us off by telling us a little bit about scholar transport in the Eastern Cape? What does it look like and what's really going wrong on the ground?
Thank you very much. As already introduced, I'm Petros Majola from Khula Community Development Project. Just talking about the challenges on the scholar transport, which was meant to help children access education. Because I always say when we talk right to education, we're not only talking about a child being in a classroom, but we're talking about a child having a teacher in a classroom, a child being able to travel from home to school without walking a very long distance. Because we've got areas in the Eastern Cape where children are forced to only start school at age 10 or 9 when they are strong enough to walk very long distances. Now, when you look at the 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds who are supposed to be starting school, they are unable to walk long distances. Now, the benefits of a scholar transport are that those young ones are able to start school at very young age when they are 5 and 6, so that they are not deprived of a right to education. So when we talk scholar transport, I want people to take it as serious as it is, because it is the only method that is used to make sure that children access school. I'm not talking about school within the proximity, where a child just jump the road and get there. But I'm talking about a child who has to walk kilometers from home to school. Going through the bushes, get raped. I know sometime I made reference to this one where a Willowvale girl walked to school with few boys, 2 or 3, and a car stopped and grabbed this child to the bushes. That child was raped. And those boys could not defend because they were still young and the child was young. Now, when we talk to government to say we want this scholar transport as a right, not just a favor, but we are exercising children's rights and human rights in general to make sure that kids get to school. So when we talk scholar transport, we don't want to see children standing along the road hitchhiking to get to school. But we want to see a child leaving home early, getting into the school bus, get dropped in front of the gate, and then when they are done for the day, walk out of the school, get into the bus, get off at home. Then a parent at home knows that my child is safe. A child knows that I'm safe. As child rights activists, we know that those kids are safe.
Mr. Majola, what you say is quite telling as well about the lengths that children go to make sure that they can attend school when they aren't given scholar transport, the distances that they have to walk, the risks that they have to encounter. I don't think any parent wants to say goodbye to their child early in the morning, uncertain of whether or not they're going to make it to school and back safely. What do you also observe in communities? What are the sacrifices that families make to get their children to school safely when they aren't left with a system that they can rely on, that reliably transports their children to school?
Parents, they love their children. They love their children to the extent of sacrifice the last cent they have. Look at the grant, the normal child support grant of 520, 530. When a child is not transported under the scholar transport program, that parent would go as far as hiring a private taxi to take the child from home to school and pay about 450 rand. At times one would pay 500 rand. It depends on the distance and on the terrain. Remember, we're in Eastern Cape, there are no tar roads here. Yeah. They drive on the gravel. And when they are there, sometimes they say, I'm saying it from own experience now, they say, all right, there is your village, 2 kilometers down the mountain. Your children or your child must walk up the mountain, come and take a taxi on top, 2 kilometers. Remember? But a parent is paying 400 or even 500 rand for that particular transport. Yet, the child after school will be dropped there and walk down that mountain.
Before the application that was launched in 2024, launched 2 previous applications around scholar transport. But what changed? At the start of 2024, you came to the LRC and another application was launched. What was the tipping point for you at the start of that academic year?
I think let me take my hat off to the Legal Resources Center for the beautiful work that they do, representing those communities and us. Now, the LRC has made or has helped us to bring back the dignity and the pride of those kids. That is why we are sitting here today as well, to say let us work together until we see the improvement. But I must say that from those years, I still remember the schools we assisted. Nathaniel Pamela, July Senior Secondary, Dunninga Primary, you name it, the list is long. But since then, there is no huge improvement. There's no improvement, in fact. But the only thing that you will see is when people say, no, we are working on this, and I can assure you that very soon we'll give you the report that shows improvement. Come that time, there's no improvement. Someone supposed to jump in and say, hang on, you are not doing it correct. What is the problem? Because the schools are there. The learners are there. The distances are there. Now, when you say to me, it is a bit difficult to verify this and that, it can be. Because you take Joe Abbey district and say, district director, provide me with this and that and that. And then the school will submit, you take the numbers and you provide transport, period. But they do not do the monitoring of the program. I saw learners traveling about 4 kilometers, four. I did the reset on the car from their village to the tar road where they are picked up by the bus that is paid. And then the kilometers that are paid are counted from that village up to the school. But 4 kilometers they walk, and then 3 kilometers they get to school. And then the bus owner would be paid 7 kilometers. So there's a lot that is not being done properly.
So I think, Mr. Majola, what you're describing very well is we saw that there were issues with schools, and you came to the rescue and you helped individual schools. But over time, what we started to see was there was a bigger, broader, more systemic problem with scholar transport in the province. And a strategy that focused on helping each school, school by school, was not going to effectively solve what the Eastern Cape province was really having to deal with, and wasn't going to ensure the safety of all learners. And I think that's a good point to unpack a little bit further, because it really sits as the trigger point between the cases that Khula used to bring, which focused on individual schools, and this case that we're talking about today, which, yes, focused on ensuring that 3 applicant schools who had not received scholar transport were now provided with scholar transport. But the relief that was sought there was also a little bit broader, to try and address these systemic issues. So Cameron, can you unpack for us a little bit, what was it that Khula tried to do in 2024 with its scholar transport case? And how did that go?
Thanks, Claire. So, as Mr. Majola knows, we actually did try previously to bring a more systemic case, but it was unsuccessful. So the 2015 case, which dealt with schools in the East London area, it was successful in the sense that the judgment declared that scholar transport does form part of the right to basic education. So that was a very important win and an important development of the jurisprudence on the right to basic education. And that really gave us a foothold going forward in terms of what can be expected from the state. A further case in 2018, again, brought individual learners relief, but it didn't solve the systemic problem. The court felt that they would give the department another chance to develop a policy or improve on the existing policy. So 2024, if you'll remember, started with a collapse of the system. There was no payment to lots of the scholar transport providers, and everyone was up in arms. It was all over the media. Schools were crying out for help. Mr. Majola was being inundated with requests for assistance, and it felt like the time was ripe to bring another case, but as you point out, systemic. So it was successful. Part A was successful in that approximately 1,000 learners at 3 schools were granted transport, which is, shouldn't be sniffed at. That's important. But Part B asked it asked the department to do a number of things. It asked that a full database be developed, which set out exactly who qualified for transport, which schools they were at. And then it demanded that everyone be transported if they qualified. It also asked the department to report regularly on their progress. The great news was that it was successful. So we got that judgment, and it was really based on the right to education, including the right to scholar transport. It highlighted the right to equality in that children, the majority of children that are not being transported are poor and black. And it also, a constitutional right to safety and security, highlighting that children are being abused or being coming under all sorts of violence because they're not being transported. So the more systemic relief was granted, and the department now did have this obligation to do all of these things. And so for the past year, we have been watching the department in slow motion trying to comply. There has been very patchy compliance. They have produced a set of data, or a data set, which supposedly sets out the number of children, which schools they're at, who's being transported, who's not being transported. But a big part of the case was that more finance would be needed to transport all of the children that weren't being transported. And so it was clear that the department needed to ask for more money from the provincial treasury in order to transport those children. In the reports that the department has had to file at court, it's become clear that the provincial treasury is not satisfied with the data that's being produced. It's also clear that there are ruptures between the Department of Transport and the Department of Education. As you pointed out earlier, they both fulfill different roles and they have to work together for the system to work. And so what we've seen is that because of that, the difficulties in their their inability to cooperate, they haven't been able to produce the information that's been verified and accurate. And therefore the provincial treasury is saying, we are not willing to give you more money until you can show us exactly what is the extent of the need and what are the systems that you've put in place to ensure that the system works. Mr. Majola, you highlighted a lot of the problems that you can see at the departmental level. And so that is really something that has to be overcome if we're going to see the scholar transport crisis in the Eastern Cape resolved. One needs to be cautious of the multiple pressures that the state is under, and that there are a lot of needs and there are a lot of budgetary requirements, and the state is in a difficult position trying to balance the books and decide where money needs to be spent. And one has to be cautious about how one approaches a case and ensuring that by putting the spotlight on one issue, it doesn't simply result in budget being taken away from another very important aspect of education, such as textbooks or school nutrition or something like that. So I think, while I completely agree that the department's response is wholly unacceptable and they missed all of the deadlines by huge margins, I think there's always a sense that we sort of give them the benefit of the doubt, hoping that with a bit more time, they'll be able to sort of find their way through this. We did suggest to the department that we offer services for someone to come in and independently investigate what are the issues, speak to the various officials, what are you struggling with, which IT systems can help you, where are the problems, are there policy issues, are there regulatory shortcomings, what is happening that is so difficult for you to get this right. And that was met with a very lukewarm response. And so I think we're getting to the point where we now need to say to the court, you need assistance in ensuring that this judgment is implemented. And we would recommend that the court appoint an independent person. You could call it a special master or the court's assistant or whatever you like. But someone with clear powers to get really into the various departments, ask the right questions, request the correct information, and make serious recommendations about what needs to change.
Mr. Majola, we've got a few more minutes left. So let's close with you. We're at the start of the 2026 academic year. This is really a good opportunity for turning over a new leaf. What do you think about the idea of someone coming in and helping the departments get it right? Do you think that that could work? And what is it that you really want to see happen with Scholar Transport for this academic year?
Yeah, definitely, I share the same sentiments as Cameron. Because looking at the system, if it doesn't work, if they do not have a capacity to show the improvement in the system, they need help from outside. So when you look at the system there, looks like they're all sitting at 20% in terms of performing in the Scholar Transport. So you can't expect another 20% to assist this one. Let us leave them and get a booster from outside that can assist and guide them going forward. But I think when we leave them, let's just give them an assurance that with the assistance of the Legal Resources Center, we'll definitely change the Eastern Cape and make sure that we improve the conditions in the Scholar Transport. Thank you.
I think that's a brilliant end note. Thank you, Mr. Majola. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation, Cameron, Mr. Majola. And we really are always inspired by the work that both of you do when it comes to Scholar Transport. It's really the bread and butter of the education system for so many people. Before we can start talking about what happens in a classroom, like you said, Mr. Majola, we have to have a conversation about how do we get children into that classroom as a very first step. So thank you for all that you do. Continue the good fight. And I hope that our listeners out there have learned something new. And we are also looking forward to sitting down with you in the next episode of the Legal Resource Radio.
Thank you for tuning in to Legal Resources Radio. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights. If you did, or even if you didn't, please remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Legal Resources SA, or visit our website at lrc.org.za for updates and exclusive content on the incredible work our team is doing. We'll see you on the next episode of Legal Resources Radio. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep up the good fight.